Face on our mind today, a special report now on John Glenn's return to space. We heard before the launch, shortly after 2 p.m. Eastern Time today, what a near perfect launch it was, except for a couple of hold patterns, and we'll explain that in a little while. But apparently there was what the space people call an anomaly upon liftoff. The vibrations apparently knocked a door loose on the space shuttle, a drag chute door. At least they think that's what it is. It may have struck an engine. It may have had some impact on the drag chute, which is used, as you know, during the landing of the space shuttle craft. CNN's John Zarella is among those at the Kennedy Space Center for the launch today. He's been listening to this news conference. Just what is it, John, that apparently has gone wrong on launch?
Well, it was certainly an incident that you don't hear of often at all, a drag chute door. Apparently, that's what they think. They haven't completely confirmed it, but the drag chute door, and I'll give you an idea where that is located. Underneath the tail here of the space shuttle, back under here, just above the engines, is where the drag chute door is located. And when they are landing in a crosswind, any kind of difficult weather conditions here at the Kennedy Space Center, they would deploy that drag chute, and it helps them to bring the vehicle in more quickly, more rapidly, to a better, more controlled stop. Now, they didn't use it for the first 50 flights of space shuttle vehicles, so it's not something they have to have. The issue that they would be concerned about would be, what if at any time, if there was some damage to the engine, if possibly that drag chute door might have bumped the engine, or if the drag chute could deploy itself at some point during some part of the flight or on re-entry. NASA officials are saying they do not believe that would happen. They don't believe it can happen. The door, if indeed it is what fell off, is about 18 inches by 22 inches, waffle-coated aluminum. That is what we are looking at now. So now, of course, an anomaly in space, again, underneath here is where that drag chute is. But again, they're not saying specifically. That's exactly what the situation was. Now, with the shuttle up in orbit, John Glenn is in orbit. That is where we stand right now. Everything else apparently going very, very smoothly with the vehicle. And it has been one heck of a day for all of us here, and certainly for the crew and John Glenn.
On Glenn's first flight back in 1962, he had 10 launch attempts before actually launching on the 11th try on February the 20th in 1962. To work with each of the crew members to accelerate the timeline and ensure we stay ready for a launch at 2 o'clock today.
Yeah, it's a very planned, choreographed event, and there are many people, you know, involved that you don't see on camera right now working behind. You can see some of the suit techs. There's Jean Alexander. She's a veteran suit tech lady. She actually was on the crew that strapped Senator Jake Garn in. She's going to be on her #2 senator now, strapping Senator John Glenn in. And the orbiter hatch right in the background, and that small kind of like metal slide is actually how they get in. They can't walk in because there's not enough clearance, so they'll actually get down on their hands and knees, and you have to crawl in and then stand up or move yourself around feet first or head first to get where you need to go, if that's the flight deck or mid deck. So you have to learn how to crawl in what handholds you can use and where you can put your knees and feet and hands, so you're not touching switches or important things like that, but yet also be able to move around and position yourself to get up into the seat. Okay, and Senator John Glenn is entering Space Shuttle, the orbiter, right now, climbing up into his middle seat in the mid deck.
Hello, NTD, PS2, com check, over. MTS2, that's NTD, I've got you loud and clear. Welcome aboard, John Glenn. Roger, thank you much. Hear you loud and clear also.
Which will give the crew more room to perform their duties during, you know, the time that they're up in space. Usually one or two seats remain up on the deck, tucked over in the corners, or one can come to
The vent ISO switch open until you get a vent ISO talkback open and a vent talkback closed.
All systems are go. All systems have been reported go for launch of Discovery. Less than 1 minute away now from the historic return of John Glenn to space.
Copy, attention all stations. The countdown clock will continue.
T-minus 10, 9, 8. We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
Houston Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
One minute and 50 seconds into the flight. Discovery now at an altitude of 25 miles, traveling at a speed of 2,900 miles an hour. The next event will be burnout and separation of Discovery's twin solid rocket boosters.
Once the vehicle left the launch pad and we heard roll program, it was turned over to mission control in Houston. That's where our CNN Tony Clark is standing by. And Tony, I would assume that by now the astronauts have probably been informed by mission control that there might be a problem with that chute door. That would be standard procedure, wouldn't it?
Indeed, the mission control, in fact, the Capcom in this case, Susan Still is the person who communicates with the astronauts and keeps them up to date on any possible changes. But as we heard in the news conference, NASA does not know what effect that would have. Mission control, the flight controller there, Linda Ham in the light-colored jacket, she has the overall responsibility for this shuttle mission. There are some 35 to 40 other people in mission control who watch a series of monitors to gauge all areas of the spacecraft's health and also the astronauts' health, also to keep the astronauts on their timeline throughout this 9-day mission.
3, 2, 1, 0.
The flight of Gemini 4 in June 1965 marked not only America's first spacewalk, but also the first time manned space flight was controlled not from Cape Canaveral, but from Houston. Houston was picked over 18 other cities to be the home for mission control, whether it was a trip to the moon or Earth orbit in the shuttle.
Okay, stand by.
The fact that it's here is sort of irrelevant. Like you say, once the vehicle launches, it could be anywhere on the face of the Earth.
And liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia on a mission.
While Florida maintains control over the launches, once the spacecraft lifts off the pad, Houston takes over.
Discovery Houston for EV8.
Go ahead, Houston.
Working in shifts around the clock, flight controllers monitor and analyze every aspect of the shuttle's performance and the crew's health.
We control the mission collectively, both in terms of helping the crew manage the system, maintaining the timeline, and doing the replanning and doing the bulk of the decision-making here on the ground.
This newest version of Mission Control began operation just 3 years ago. It cost $250 million and uses standard workstations and local area networks rather than the big mainframe-based system of the old Mission Control.
And there are some replanning summary sheets included in your execute package.
Astronauts fill the role of spacecraft communicators, Capcoms. They're the voice of mission control to the shuttle.
And also to represent the crew back to the flight control team and to sort of watch out for the crew's interests, help us keep an awareness of what the crew might be thinking in the cockpit or how the crew workload is being distributed among the crew members.
Houston is not only the place where the mission is controlled, this is also the place where the astronauts do a large percentage of their training. In fact, behind me you can see one of the shuttle trainers. It is a full-size trainer that the astronauts use to work out throughout the mission to try to figure out the different roles that they will be performing throughout this mission. This is where they learn to do what they do in flight. This has been a, so far, successful mission from NASA's standpoint in the public interest area, in trying to generate public interest, not only in people my age who remember John Glenn when he flew the first time, but also an effort to get young people interested. Over at the Teague Auditorium today, elementary school students came. They have adopted this mission sort of as their own, and they sat in the auditorium today watching and hearing the launch for themselves. In fact, the speakers inside there gave them the whole feel of the shuttle as it took off today, and that's one of NASA's really key efforts now, is not only to keep people who have followed the space program on board, but also to generate new interest in the space and shuttle programs. John?